The books of Daniel and Revelation have a chiastic structure, which means the theme of the first half is mirrored in the second half. The theme of chapter 11 is the Day of Atonement, which we should therefore expect to see mirrored in chapter 12. The prophecy of the Day of Atonement is a two-sided coin. Heads is the final atonement in the fullness of Christ's coming. Tails is the very antithesis of that, as it will be the enemy's plan to keep it from happening. The final atonement is, by definition, the close of probation, which will be consummated by the coming of the Antichrist. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven. The great wonder in heaven is the unprecedented ceremony that will take place in the church. The final judgment will involve the two testaments, which are the whole truth that is represented as the woman on the moon. The testament of the Mosaic covenant, represented as the moon, is the failed covenant relationship, given that the moon is a dead planet having no light of its own. Therefore, it is her footstool. The New Testament is her garment of light, which is Christ's righteousness that shines like the sun. That says her character perfectly reflects his. Her crown explains her victory of faith. The 12 stars are the 12 tribes of Israel, while the crown is the victory of the New Testament church. The vision depicts the bride of Christ, adorned for her husband, as she stands faultless before the presence of his glory. However, she is pregnant and pain to be delivered. The birth of her child will mark the beginning of the end, which suggests the woman represents the church of the Last Supper. Another wonder in heaven will be Satan's counterfeit of the atonement, which is explained in the rest of the passage. The word dragon literally means a large serpent. Traditionally, the dragon has been illustrated as a mythological Far Eastern dragon, like the one shown here in the insert, which isn't what the text is referring to at all. A large red serpent would look something like the one shown here, with 4 horns on its head. The serpent always represents deception, while the color red always represents sin. The same large red serpent with 3 heads on each side would look very much like the lampstand that stood in the holy place. What's interesting is that the description of this dragon mimics that of the 7 spirits in Isaiah chapter 11. Isaiah says the main branch or the root of the tree is the Spirit of the Lord, just as the large red serpent is the counterfeit spirit of Antichrist. The other 6 spirits are the branches of the tree. Likewise, the serpent also has the same 6 branches that extend from its main trunk or root. Clearly, the great red dragon is a counterfeit of the lampstand, which represents Christ crucified and the final revelation of the Passover, both of which represent the final atonement that will be the coming of God's kingdom. That means the chronology of the vision must be what will follow the prophecy of the 7 letters. The vision of the great red dragon in heaven will be Satan's last-ditch effort to fulfill the prophecy of Isaiah 14. Daniel calls this deception the little horn because it refers to the smaller horn on the incense altar, which is the symbol of Christ's experience in the Garden of Gethsemane as our great intercessor. That experience preceded his crucifixion, which again makes the point that this deception will take place before the ordeal of the final Passover will confront the remnant church. This symbol more clearly identifies the nature of the final deception, its 10 horns being the strength of the covenant relationship, which Satan plans to counterfeit as the light of the world. It also explains the fact that its heads have 7 crowns compared to the woman or the moon who only has 1. The prophet that teaches lies, he is the tail. A person's feet is their final fate. The serpent's tail are his feet. He teaches lies, as Jesus said he would in Matthew 24. In the beginning, Satan was honorable, even as Christ was. But his lies caused a third of the angelic hosts to join him in his rebellion in heaven. He and they were cast into the earth, which was the bottomless pit. In this case, history will be repeated, as Satan will do the very same thing in God's church. The difference being, this time, verse 10 says, he will deceive the whole world. The word Pharaoh means the God-man. As a type of the Antichrist, Pharaoh ordered the midwives of Egypt to kill every male child born Hebrew. Moses was, in a figure, the Christ child that escaped that death sentence. Herod likewise determined to kill the child when he slew all the children that were in Bethlehem from 2 years old and under. The third time around, Satan will seek to destroy the child, which is the point made about the Passover. It too will involve a death sentence. This time, the birth of the child will mean Satan's end for sure. He will know that he'll only have a short time left before God will have finished the time of his rebellion. We understand that the Passover is the judgment of a certain people in a given place at a certain time. The woman on the moon is God's last day church that will be prepared for the event of the final Passover. She too will face an enemy that will seek to devour her child as soon as it will be born. That child, in this case, will be the image of Christ perfectly reproduced in her, which will be the church of the new covenant. As she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. The rod of iron is a direct reference to Psalm 2, which explains the fact that the kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed. But that won't change the fact that he shall laugh. He shall have them in derision and vex them in his sore displeasure. Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, as he will break them with a rod of iron, and shall dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. The child caught up unto God and to his throne is the entire 4th chapter of the book. John saw the throne and the one that sat on it. We understand that the throne always means one thing and one thing only: the judgment. The woman fleeing into the wilderness is a direct reference to Israel's exodus from Egypt, which we saw earlier in chapter 9. Her flight into the wilderness was on the 2 wings of a great eagle, which were those 10 plagues and the Passover. The place that was prepared for her was the foot of Mount Sinai. We understand that the camp in the wilderness was a type of the Feast of Tabernacles, which will be God's final rest of the Sabbath for the victorious church that will experience the close of probation. The foregone conclusion in all of this is, of course, the ratification of the new covenant on Mount Zion. Therefore, Paul says, "Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, which is the sin of unbelief. And let us run with patience the race that is set before us." The race before us is the Exodus that will take spiritual Israel from the house of bondage to the Jordan River and the land of promise. The woman sheltered in the wilderness for 1260 days perfectly describes what will be the manna that fed Israel in the wilderness. That bread from heaven was the promise that spiritual Israel would understand, accept, and fulfill the prophecy of the Passover. It would be the living bread that would sustain the church as it would be on hold, waiting for the Lord to return.